Hi, I'm Sandeep and you are watching The Weekender at 5. In today's show, we deal with an important question facing New Zealand related to protest in Parliament. The question that we ask is New Zealand in an uncharted territory in dealing with this protest in Parliament? Very early, when this protest began, New Zealand Police, Wellington Police Commander Corey Parnell, he has said in a media statement that dealing with this protest is an uncharted territory for New Zealand Police. The Indian Weekender was quick to publish a story and make an opinion that it's not just New Zealand Police which is an uncharted territory. It is actually the entire New Zealand government which is in an uncharted territory. Dealing with the fringe element in a society is always confounding and confusing. And most of the advanced and most of the modern democracies, they suffer from that bewilderment, confusion that comes along in dealing with the fringe element of society. Many may agree or may disagree with the use of the word fringe associated with the anti-vaxxer campaigners protesting in front of Parliament. But in a country with more than 96% of double vaccinated rates, it is easy to have that kind of opinion. We will delve more into the use of the word fringe element related to this Parliament protest later on in this program. But just a quick overview of what's happening on the ground. Today we are in the 9th day of the protest. You would have seen last Thursday when police responded to a very measured enforcement, arresting 130 odd people from the protesting groups. After that, we haven't seen any enforcement action. There was a surprise move from Parliament premises where Speaker Trevor Mallard had ordered opening up water blast from sprinkles, which has kind of irked a lot of protesters and which has also created differing opinions from rest of New Zealanders who probably thought that that was not the best response coming from the Speaker. In fact, New Zealand Police has also said that probably they won't agree or disagree with the response initiated by the Parliament premises. We have also seen that yesterday, on the 8th day, New Zealand Police Commissioner Andrew Coster has come out and said that they would be considering forcefully towing up the vehicles which has been parked illegally near the Parliament premises, blocking the streets, affecting the businesses. We have been hearing the stories of inconvenience being caused to Wellingtonians, businesses, office goers, school goers, schools, principals, and the normal everyday life is being affected. So in response to that, we have seen New Zealand Police coming up with this decision to forcefully tow the vehicles which has been parked in those premises.
And the message to them was move your vehicles to lawful parking or have your vehicles taken and not returned.
Today, as of now, what we have seen that despite Police Commissioner coming out and saying that they would be initiating this towing up operation, but just now, till now, we haven't been able to see any action on the ground. And there has been news that many private operators, towing companies, they are reluctant to be part of this police mission. And the reasons, they are quite varied. Some they are citing safety concerns and some they are saying that they have some sympathy towards those protesters. So indeed, New Zealand seems to be, the government and authorities seems to be in an uncharted territory. The Indian Weekender has published and delved into this issue quite early because we were assessing the situation that is always the case whenever a country or a government has to deal with the elements which are in the fringes. It really becomes difficult for the government. We have seen and we have heard from government, their response is outright no to engage with those protesters, a call that is echoed by those in the opposition. We have seen National Party leader Christopher Luxon backing what Prime Minister has asserted before, that even his government would be engaging with the protesters as long as they do not become more coherent in their demands and they do not become more political and civic in the way they are expressing those demands. However, regardless, we all have differing kind of emotions. In general, from what we are seeing, for a large chunk of New Zealanders, including Kiwi Indian communities, it is quite difficult to comprehend and understand the nature of the demand being posed by these so-called protesters who are being dubbed as anti-vaxxers and also called as fringe elements, a charge that this protesting groups is now vehemently denying. And as the days are passing by, what we are seeing is that the protesters are successful in getting some kind of positive attention, both from the media and from the rest of New Zealand. The kind of support, the kind of attention that these protesters they are getting is that the overall opposition to the government's response and the government's position of not dealing with these or engaging with these protesters is coming under scrutiny without agreeing or towing the core message of protesters that vaccines are against the vaccination and against and supporting the conspiracy theories related to COVID-19. Indeed, things are quite confusing, a bit very incoherent messaging coming from all around the protesting groups.
It's not the point. Yeah, we're here for a reason. We're here to get the mandates lifted so we can just carry on normal life.
Prime Minister doesn't want to talk to us. We're going to stay put.
So the Indian Weekender has been doing its due diligence. We have been regularly reporting on the ongoing protest and the associated developments on the story, including sending our reporter, a field reporter, on the ground for more than one occasion during the last week, where we had opportunity to listen directly to what protesters are saying and also to speak some of the protesters and understand their key messages.
We've seen some horrific behaviour down there, and I'm not going to legitimise it.
I'm not talking about the protesters anymore. I'm talking
sorry,
about
if I could just finish, I am trying to answer your question. So my response here is not directed towards them because that is not what I've seen them asking for, but to New Zealand. And yes, legitimate questions we've had in the past around when do we ease up on some of the things we're having to use, we will lift them. But can I give you a date? Well, as our cases are increasing, it's very difficult for us to put that date on it. But we do anticipate being able to move away from that in the future. And when we can, we will. But when we're on the upside of a curve in an Omicron outbreak, now's not the time to do that. So we've also struggled in the past to put dates on the easing of different restrictions. But you've seen as soon as we can, we have moved away.
One of the key things that needs to be explained to our Kiwi Indian audiences and to the rest of New Zealanders is that what these protesters are primarily asking for. In very early days, they were dubbed as fringe elements who are just anti-vaxxers or conspiratists against COVID-19, who are in denial of COVID-19, and they have got all kind of conspiracy views around the vaccination related to COVID-19 virus. But as the days have progressed, we have come to know that there are two lines of argument. One is, are they anti-vaccination or are they anti-vaccine mandates? In some scenarios, even government is saying that they both are the same. But when we speak or hear individually from protesters, we come to know that in their view, these are two different things. Many protesters, they have conveyed and they have affirmed that they are not necessarily against vaccination, but they are instead for the freedom from vaccination mandate. To give you a better explanation what it actually means, we have already explained in our stories that we have published on our platform, but the governments do have legal predicaments of compulsorily imposing vaccination on its citizens for the fear of legal repercussions. So, government has introduced vaccine mandates. The vaccine mandates are basically a simple thing that those businesses, those institutions, those organizations who are participating in vaccine mandate, they will have to ensure that only people who are vaccinated are allowed to enter into their premises. This vaccine mandates, once businesses they decide, once institutions, places of work, they decide that they are part of vaccine mandate, then they have a responsibility that they can only allow people who are vaccinated in those premises. And in lieu of this arrangement, those businesses earn more freedom for themselves on the way how to operate. It is to say that if a small hospitality business is participating in the vaccine mandate, then it becomes their duty to ensure that only those people who are properly vaccinated and have got vaccine pass, government issued vaccine pass, can come into their premises and dine and enjoy their services. The others, the people who choose not to get vaccinated, well, yes, they can enjoy that freedom, but under government's vaccine mandates, they are denied of the rights and the freedom to be able to go in those places which are part of vaccine mandates and continue to do the things that they were used to do, be it going out to dinner or going for shopping, which they used to do before COVID-19 started or before vaccine mandate started. Most of the New Zealanders, they are reading the material in the media, in the stories and the journalistic story that is coming out, is that most of the people who are protesting or who are agreeing with the protesters out there in Parliament, they are kind of fringe elements who don't understand the COVID situation, who are in denial of the deaths and the havoc being caused by COVID overseas and here in New Zealand as well. And they are being conceived more as socially fringe elements who don't have respect for or consideration for the well-being of others. On the other hand, the protesters, they have a differing view about themselves. They say that they completely agree with others' right of being vaccinated, but they also want others to acknowledge their own choices of not getting vaccinated from COVID-19 vaccination. And that choice can be determined by n number of reasons, but they want at the end of the day that choice should be respectfully respected by the rest of New Zealanders. And they should not be forced to leave their jobs, resign from their jobs, end their businesses, shut down their businesses, and face a social disenfranchisement. So indeed, there are tens of thousands of people from what have been heard in different media stories that who have recently been socially disenfranchised by losing their jobs, losing their source of earning, and being socially orchestrated. The kids, they are being not able to socialize, go and play games and participate in their weekly games and other social gatherings. So it is the pain of these New Zealanders who were otherwise or who were till recently part of the mainstream New Zealand, having decent jobs, working along with other New Zealanders in normal day-to-day jobs like in ambulances, fire brigade, police, banks, and other places. Today, they are finding themselves being pushed towards marginalization. It is that pain of those people who have been recently socially disenfranchised, who have now combined or who have now joined the so-called hardcore anti-vaxxers, and they are supporting that thing in the form of a protest in the Parliament. With each passing day and increasing media attention and coverage, we are seeing that few opinions about those protesters is changing, at least getting diluted, as people they are able to see that not everyone involved in that protesting group is someone like a fringe element. They are normal New Zealanders, elderlies, middle-aged, even youngsters who have recently been forced to be marginalized by the imposition of vaccine mandates. It's their story that we wanted to tell, and in line of that duty of reporting about everyone, the Indian Weekender has sent out our reporters on more than one occasions, and we were able to speak to them to understand what their key demands and key messages are.
So we've been in New Zealand for 32 years.
Yes.
And this is the biggest party we've had in New Zealand.
All right. So कल बहुत तेज बारिश हुई थी, तूफान आया था.
हम लोग आज ही अभी आया, एयरपोर्ट से डायरेक्ट यहाँ हुआ.
अच्छा.
तो अभी आ गया.
तो आपके क्या जज्बात हैं, आप क्या कहना चाहते हैं, मतलब आप गवर्नमेंट को क्या कहना चाहते हैं?
We're not competing against it. Well, we're not telling people not to get the jab. We're telling them don't insist that we get the jab. So we are here for.
Pardon?
We are here for freedom of choice.
Right.
Regarding the vaccine.
Right.
We are here for against the mandate where people have lost jobs, lost income for no reason.
Right.
So this is what we are standing for, and we want our kids to have the same freedoms that we grew up with, and we've known New Zealand for 32 years.
लेकिन एक मैसेज जा रहा है कि सब कुछ अगेंस्ट है, मतलब यहाँ पे जो है वो सब अगेंस्ट है हर चीज के. तो ऐसा है?
Nothing. People are not against. People are for freedom. So we must turn it around the other way. We're not saying we're so much against mandates and against things. People make that out to be the case. लेकिन हम लोग तो pro choice है, pro freedom है, not against. सब लोग बोलते हैं कि against this, against that, वो तो सब बेकार है. हम लोग तो pro choice है, pro freedom है. कोई जबरदस्ती मत कर ले हमारे ऊपर.
तो आप आज ही आए हैं यहाँ पे?
अभी आधा घंटा हुआ.
लेकिन ये प्रोटेस्ट चल रहा है और आपको आज पता होगा कि आज 1000 केसेस आए हैं.
क्या बोला?
1000 केसेस आए हैं आज.
हाँ, तो क्या हुआ? ओमिक्रॉन से जितना ज्यादा केसेस आएंगे उतना अच्छा है, क्योंकि हम लोग का नेचुरल इम्यूनिटी बन जाएगा. इंडिया में क्या देख ले, कितना मिलियंस होते हैं, कितने लोग मर रहे हैं अभी.
लेकिन गवर्नमेंट का कहना है कि उनको चिंता है लोगों की.
वो तो किसी का कहानी सुनना मत. उन लोग का किसी का, they only thinking about themselves and control. That's all they want. Right now there is no reason for any mandates. Omicron has changed the game.
तो आपको क्या लगता है ये प्रोटेस्ट कब तक चलेगा और क्या फेट है इस प्रोटेस्ट का?
ये तो अब जब तक चलेगा जब मैंडेट निकल गया. Until she gives a date or she drops a mandate, the protest will continue.
मतलब ये प्रोटेस्ट चलेगा ही चलेगा.
Can you see this going anywhere?
No. I mean, I can see the enthusiasm, but I just wanted to ask, like.
No, it's not going. And today they asked the question of the people. Matt King was asked the question on 1ZB and on News Hub in the morning on news.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing. People, Jacinda, you give us a date when the mandate is going, or you remove the mandate, and we will disperse the same day.
Right. तो क्या आपकी डिमांड क्या है?
Remove the mandates for vaccine passes. Remove the thing where if you don't have a jab, you will lose your job. That is the biggest people. People have now lost jobs because they want to choice.
So अभी यह फाइट ऐसी है कि अगर आपके पास जैब नहीं है तो आपके पास जॉब नहीं है. जॉब नहीं है तो आपकी फ्रीडम नहीं है.
Exactly. And people are
तो ये पॉइंट है.
And worse than that is it's now affecting children. If you don't have a jab or you don't have a vaccine, you cannot play sport. You cannot go in your own team. Little kids are not being allowed to play sports.
Right.
This is ridiculous where you try to control and influence people to that level.
Right.
So that is the main thing that we are looking to.
But यहाँ पे बहुत सारे बच्चे हैं जो जिनकी पढ़ाई और फिर उनका वो एक अलग एटमॉस्फेयर में आ गए हैं अभी.
But the children are here because anyway they are being banned from going into school without a mandate, without the vaccine passes and all that. They are being, even when they go to school, they are being made to feel like lepers and Harijans.
Right.
They are being treated worse than the Dalits in India.
How many people are in the protest?
Over here, there are about 300 tents, I think, already.
300 tents.
300 tents. And if you look at the camper vans, cars outside, there will be at least 3,000 people camped.
3,000.
At least camped over here.
Alright.
But on a day-to-day basis in the day, we'll be getting upwards of 5, 6, 7,000 people.
कल बहुत ही तेज तूफान आया था, तो आपने किसी से यहाँ पे बात करी कि कैसा रहा, कैसे मैनेज
Yeah,
किया?
yeah. Our friend who's from Auckland, she was here on the weekend in the
Okay.
rain, fully flooded, but that is when they all bonded. इकट्ठा हुआ.
राइट, तो क्या हम बात कर सकते हैं उनसे?
She's come. She was such. She went back. She was here Saturday, Sunday. She came back this morning to Auckland.
Okay.
Afternoon, she's back on the way. She's in the car right now, coming back.
So ये प्रोटेस्ट सिर्फ यहीं पे है या फिर कहीं और पे भी है?
Christchurch, no, they're not camping anywhere else.
Okay.
But Christchurch, there was a big demonstration in the street on Sunday. There was over 20,000 people there.
Right.
Picton, on the other side where the ferry is booked out for the whole week. People can't come.
Right,
There are about 10,000 people there, waiting to come across.
So the question is that is the government willing, is New Zealand's political establishment willing to engage and concede those demands being raised by those protesters? We have already heard a firm no from Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and different ministers in the government who are not willing to engage with those protesters. A stand that is being echoed by a lot of New Zealanders, including the major political parties in opposition as well. We have heard from National Party leader Christopher Luxon. We have heard from ACT Party leader David Seymour that they are also of the view of not to be engaging with the protesters. Well, that was the stand taken by the opposition leaders in the beginning of the protest movement, when at that time there was a lot of radical elements, a lot of extreme kind of messaging coming out from the protesting ground, including the lynching of political leaders and MPs, which has definitely offended everyone alike. However, now we have seen a small or a subtle change in tactics of the protesters. They are getting more and more benign. They are trying to come out with a more concrete message, although their messaging is quite blunt, that they will only leave the protesting ground once vaccine mandate is abolished or removed, which is again a very extreme demand, without the respect towards 96% of New Zealander population who have willingly double vaccinated themselves and also got booster doses, but also are happy to be part of vaccine mandate. Yet protesters, they are continuing with that blunt demand that they will only leave premises when the vaccine mandate is abolished by the government. So these are two extreme positions we have heard from the government, from the political establishment, and of the protesters. Indeed, this is an uncharted territory for New Zealand politics, as they have never been in a situation to deal with this kind of social unrest. The other examples of New Zealand being in uncharted territory that we have seen and heard news yesterday, where New Zealand police have explored the option of getting military vehicles to tow away the privately and illegally parked vehicles of protesters, and that option was exhausted, as the military has refused to do that job, probably because they were also lacking in capabilities. And today we are hearing that police reliance on private towing operators is also not yielding the best results because of n number of reasons, including having sympathy towards those protesters, which raises question about capability at the disposal of New Zealand state to be able to remove those illegally parked vehicles, which is causing nuisance to the rest of Wellingtonians. So whatever pathway New Zealand police or New Zealand government will choose going forward, it is definitely an uncharted territory. And it would be interesting to see that how the government will eventually diffuse this situation. We are already seeing that many political leaders in the opposition are gradually conceding to the idea that it might be apt to at least start engaging with some selected leaders who have got more coherent messaging, so that they can reach to an amicable and agreeable solution. However, we haven't heard anything of this kind from the government yet, and that is why it would be interesting to keep an eye in the next few days on how eventually government has responded, or government chooses to respond to this protest in Parliament. Well, as the New Zealand government authorities, they are struggling to find a way forward to diffuse the situation in front of Parliament. Normal New Zealanders, they are also trying to get their head around the situation. When they are reading the news every day about record number of cases, 900, today it were around 1140 new cases coming up. Everything is falling into place as per the various epidemiologists and experts have been predicting that there would be a rapid and steep surge of numbers. Government has already activated phase 2 in its public health response to Omicron epidemic in the community. While they are hearing those stories, they are also confused and they are also confounded when they are seeing those protesters from 300 to maybe towards small thousands, 1,000 or 2,000 protesters who are moving around without any mask, without any social distancing, without questions, with questions on their sanitary conditions in those protesting camps. We haven't heard or seen the stories of them being infected by COVID-19 virus. So that's an interesting question that comes to the mind of ordinary New Zealanders, that on one hand, they are living in a self-imposed lockdown, trying to stay away from businesses, from retails, from restaurants and cafes, malls, which is affecting the bigger economy of New Zealand, just to be safe from this COVID virus. But on the other hand, when they are watching these protesters living an uninhibited life without any pretense of social distancing or using of mask, and still the virus doesn't seem to affect them, or those stories are not coming out. Are those cases being reported? So today, no one seems to have a definitive answer to this problem in front of New Zealand today. We don't know what is in the future, how government will eventually diffuse the crisis. Will protesters be willing to back off and let Wellingtonians enjoy their day-to-day life, while the rest of New Zealand deal through this growing pandemic of Omicron in the community? We don't know what is in future, but what we certainly know today is that New Zealand government authorities are indeed in an uncharted territory of dealing with this biggest protest in front of Parliament. We will continue to deal with this issue, bring you more live coverage, and deal with the important questions around this important issue facing us today. Thank you very much.